There are things in this world that are hidden for a reason, not to deprive you, but to protect you. For thousands of years, the awakening of the serpent fire has been revered, feared, and deliberately concealed. From the sacred temples of Kemet to the tantric chambers of India, this energy, known as Kundalini, was never a public teaching. It was a guarded flame, passed in whispers between those who had walked through the fire and emerged transformed. But today, in the age of instant access and spiritual consumerism, the deepest truths are being plucked from the dark and sold in the light. And with that comes a danger far greater than ignorance, the illusion of understanding. Because the truth is, Kundalini was never meant for everyone. And if you're not ready, it will break you. You are not here to awaken Kundalini. Kundalini is here to awaken you. Imagine this. Buried deep within your spine, coiled not just as an energy, but as a memory, lies a serpent of fire. Silent, patient, ancient. Not metaphor, not mere symbolism, but a dormant force embedded within the architecture of your biology and consciousness. It is not a myth, it is a mechanism. And it is not exclusive to yogis, gurus, or sages of the East. It's in you, and if you were born into a body, it was born with you.
But here lies the riddle. If this power exists within all of us, why do so few speak of it in real terms? Why is Kundalini often cloaked in mysticism, veiled behind chants, symbols, and vague promises of bliss? Why is the most profound evolutionary mechanism of the human experience treated like folklore and Western science? This isn't just about energy. This is about memory. This is about the seed of something far older than any religion. A seed that remembers the stars, the cosmic womb, and the moment your soul agreed to take form. And the truth? Most people will go their entire lives never knowing it was ever there. In ancient African and Egyptian systems of knowledge, the idea of a latent energy within the human body was never seen as esoteric. It was medicine. It was science. It was initiation. The serpent, the spine, the breath, and the light behind your eyes, these weren't poetic devices. They were maps. Western science, in its obsession with objectivity, severed itself from the subjective landscapes of the inner world. What couldn't be measured was dismissed. But ancient civilizations didn't have that problem. They didn't need microscopes to understand that vibration creates matter. They didn't need fMRI scans to perceive consciousness flowing through the body like a current. Instead, they left us blueprints, hidden in architecture, embedded in ritual, whispered in oral traditions. The Digit pillar of ancient Egypt wasn't just a religious symbol. It was a spinal map. The rising of Osiris wasn't a resurrection tale. It was a neurobiological code. But when colonizers and later modern academia rewrote these cultures, they stripped the teachings of their multidimensional meaning. Kundalini didn't disappear. It was buried beneath layers of misinterpretation. Let's get real. The idea of a coiled serpent at the base of the spine seems mystical until you start examining modern neurobiology and quantum biophysics. The vagus nerve, one of the longest nerves in the human body, is deeply involved in breath regulation, trauma response, and states of call or activation. It's a highway of signals. And breath, prana, ruach, pneuma, is the steering wheel. Now think, What happens when you breathe with intention? What happens when breath becomes rhythm? Ancient breathwork practices weren't mystical performances. They were precise mechanisms for stimulating this inner network. Kundalini is not a floating concept. It is deeply embodied. The heat, the tremors, the visions, the euphoria. These are not symptoms of imagination. They are symptoms of neuroelectrical activation. And just like electricity, if you don't know how to channel it, it can either light your home or burn it down. So why doesn't modern medicine talk about this? Simple. Because the body has been treated as a machine, not a temple.
Here's where it gets uncomfortable. The awakening of Kundalini is not always gentle. It does not always arrive in meditation halls, dressed in incense and tranquility. Sometimes it comes through crisis, through heartbreak, through trauma, through the shattering of identity. Why? Because that fire was never meant to simply soothe you. It was meant to dissolve the false self. Many people today are experiencing spontaneous awakenings, and they're being misdiagnosed. Anxiety, psychosis, dissociation. But what if some of these symptoms are not disorders, but signs of a consciousness that no longer fits inside the old container? Kundalini doesn't ask for permission. When it moves, and the only real question is, will you flow with it or fight it? There's a reason these truths were hidden. A reason why modern schooling never mentioned the serpent. Why science split from spirit. Why ancient maps were burned and rewritten. Why colonization was followed by erasure. Because a human being fully aware of their inner power cannot be enslaved. Kundalini is not just energy, it is sovereignty. And when it rises, it doesn't just electrify the spine, it erases programming. It turns followers into seekers, consumers into creators. And no system of control can survive too many people waking up to that truth. The seed of fire is not just yours, it is humanity's inheritance. But like all seeds, it needs one thing above all, the right condition to grow. This journey starts not with belief, but with breath, with the willingness to remember, with the courage to face the fire and the humility to be transformed by it. Because what lies at the base of your spine is not a threat. It's a promise. A promise that you are more than you've been told. And this is where it all begins. They say sound was the first creation. Before light, before matter, before form, there was vibration. And somewhere, encoded in the deep recesses of the human body, the memory of that vibration still lingers. This is not merely spiritual poetry. This is biology buried. We now enter the second gate of Kundalini, not as mystics alone, but as investigators of frequency. In nearly every ancient cosmology, breath and vibration precede creation. In ancient Egypt, the breath of Ptah spoke the world into being. In Vedic India, the sound Om was not a word, but a primordial frequency that emanated the universe. The act of breathing is more than life support. It's a reenactment of the original act of creation. And this breath is tied directly to the body's ability to generate internal resonance. But where does the serpent come in? The serpent was never a snake. It was a waveform, a sine wave, a symbol of energy undulating through space and spine. What ancient cultures saw was not a reptile, but the pattern of vibratory life.
Modern science is catching up. Barely. The vagus nerve, that mysterious pathway from brain to gut, is now being studied for its power to modulate heart rate, reduce inflammation, and control emotional regulation. But what yogic traditions knew thousands of years ago, science still struggles to articulate. That this nerve is a key conduit for resonant energy. When we breathe deeply with awareness, we activate the vagus nerve, and that activation creates a cascade of internal harmonization. It is the ancient equivalent of tuning a stringed instrument. In Kundalini practices, breathwork, pranayama, is not optional. It is the ignition switch. And when tuned with precision, it begins to wake the coiled energy at the base of the spine. Pyramids, temples, dolmens. Why were so many ancient structures designed with acoustic precision? Because frequency is not passive. Sound waves move matter. They can levitate, break, shape, and heal. Many initiation chambers in Egypt and India were designed to resonate at specific frequencies. Often between 111 Hz and 432 Hz, tones known to entrain the brain and stimulate bodily healing. Could it be that these sites were not tombs, but tuning chambers? Did they serve to awaken the vibratory serpent within?
Take a moment to observe the double helix. Two intertwining serpents wrapped around an invisible axis. That is not a coincidence. DNA responds to frequency. In 1984, a study showed that certain frequencies could repair broken DNA strands. In 2011, Russian scientists proposed that DNA acts as an antenna, receiving and emitting information via light and sound. The ancient caduceus symbol, staff with two serpents, wasn't merely medical. It was bioenergetic. It was a map of the body's deepest coding language, vibration. Kundalini, then, is not just spiritual fire. It's genetic light and sound rising. Let's go deeper into breath. When breath is patterned in specific rhythms, box breathing, alternate nostril, kapalabhati, it alters brainwave states. From beta to alpha, from alpha to theta. Some advanced breathwork can even induce gamma states associated with mystical experience. This is Neuroalchemy, and the ancient serpent responds to the alchemy of breath. Each inhalation becomes a note, each exhalation a release. The yogic breath was never just about oxygen. It was tuning the instrument of consciousness. And the ultimate aim? To create an internal frequency that could awaken the hidden energy within.
Nada Yoga teaches that the universe is made of sound. Not external sound, but inner sound. Practitioners in deep meditation often report hearing the sound of silence, a high-pitched ringing, a flute, a hum, a hiss. This hiss, they say, is the sound of the serpent uncoiling. It is not metaphor. In high states of awareness, the body becomes an ear, and the breath becomes music. The serpent of vibration is not just awakened, it sings.
Why don't we learn this? Why isn't breathwork central in our hospitals? Why is the nervous system treated as mechanical rather than musical? Because a resonant being cannot be controlled. Because a society in tune with itself cannot be enslaved. Kundalini was hidden, not because it was false, but because it was too powerful. To awaken the serpent of vibration is to return to authorship of your body, your emotion, your mind. It is to move from reaction to resonance, from noise to knowing. And it all begins with breath. What if the breath we take isn't just for survival, but for memory? What if every inhale is a signal to something buried deep within our biology, waiting to be awakened? In this part, we descend into the lungs of the ancient temple, the human body, and discover how breath work was never meant to merely calm the mind, but to ignite an ancient flame, the breath of the serpent. In nearly every ancient culture, the breath was sacred. In Egypt, it was the wind of life. In India, prana. In China, qi. These were not poetic metaphors, they were technologies of consciousness. Modern science tells us that breath controls our nervous system, but what ancient civilizations knew was that breath also regulates access to our inner temple, our mind, memory, emotion, and transcendence. Breathing isn't just gas exchange, it's a frequency dial. Every breath is a key, and when performed with intention, rhythm, and awareness, it becomes the code to enter states of consciousness that modern neuroscience is only beginning to rediscover. Imagine your body as a temple. The spine is its axis, the brain its altar, but the breath, the breath, is the music that animates its sacred halls. Ancient rituals understood this symphony. They were designed not just to celebrate gods, but to activate God consciousness within. The Great Pyramids, stone lungs. The sacred chants, breath given form. Even in silence, monks knew how to manipulate breath to slow time, alter perception, and induce visions. These weren't mystical fantasies. They were somatic architectures, internal technologies passed through lineages of breath holders and serpent whisperers. Enter the vagus nerve, a modern rediscovery of an ancient secret. Stretching from brain to gut, the vagus is the wandering nerve, the highway of spirit to flesh communication. Through slow, rhythmic breathing, the vagus nerve becomes activated. Heart rate slows. Digestion improves. But more than that, memories buried in the unconscious begin to rise. It is not coincidence that trauma is stored in the body. The ancients knew, to free the soul, the breath must flow. And when the breath flows through the channel of the serpent, the spine, it becomes not just healing, but transformation. Every breath makes sound, but intentional breath makes resonance. The hissing sound of pranayama, the rhythmic breath of tumo, the thunder breath of ancient Africa. All of these carry the signature of the serpent, a breath that vibrates the spine, coils around the sacred center and climbs toward the pineal light. Why did so many cultures associate enlightenment with snakes? Because they were mapping breath on the body. Serpents crawl on earth, but breath serpents rise through us.
Once initiated into breathwork, ancient adepts spoke of doors within. Eyes closed, but vision expanded, not metaphorically, literally. Modern experiments with holotropic breathwork have shown that extended conscious breathing can induce DMT-like experiences, access traumatic memory for healing, and generate spontaneous emotional release. But the ancients were ahead by millennia. They spoke of nadis, energy rivers, of Sushumna, the central channel, and, at the base, the dormant serpent. Every breath we take consciously is a pull on the serpent's tail, a call to rise. To breathe is to remember. To remember is to resurrect. Ancient ceremonies used the breath to prepare for death, to commune with ancestors, to guide new life into the world. Breath was a boundary dissolver. It stitched dimensions. In Egypt, the breath of the Ka and the Ba. In Vedic India, the breath of the Atman. In Africa, the breath of the soul's drumbeat. These weren't concepts. They were lived. They were practiced. They were passed on, not by writing, but by breathing together.
You do not need a pyramid. You do not need a shaman. You have the serpent within you. You have the temple. You have the breath. And that is enough to begin.
What if the temple wasn't built around you, but within you? For centuries, mystics, sages, and seekers across the ancient world spoke of a sacred light within the human brain, a divine flame hidden in the folds of the nervous system, a lens, a compass, a throne, the pineal gland. And they weren't wrong. They were simply centuries ahead of us. Buried between the left and right hemispheres of your brain sits a tiny pine cone-shaped gland, roughly the size of a grain of rice. And yet, for such a small organ, it holds vast symbolic weight.
In Egypt, it was the Eye of Horus. In Vedic philosophy, the Ajna Chakra, or third eye. In esoteric Christian mysticism, the lamp of the body. In modern neuroscience, an odd vestigial structure once thought to do little more than regulate melatonin. But here's where ancient wisdom and suppressed science converge. Recent studies have found that the pineal gland contains photoreceptive cells similar to those found in the retina. Why would there be light-sensitive cells inside your brain? Unless that gland was meant to perceive an inner light. Zoom in further, and the geometry of the pineal gland mimics the spiral, the same mathematical rhythm found in galaxies, seashells, and sacred temples. This is the same spiral that defines Kundalini's movement, a rising serpentine flow that ascends the spinal temple and activates what some call the crown of light. But what if this wasn't just poetry or philosophy? What if the pineal gland is the portal, the literal neuroalchemical chamber through which human consciousness communicates with what we might call soul, source, or even star origin. Endogenously, the pineal gland is suspected to secrete DMT, a dimethyltryptamine, a psychoactive compound known for inducing otherworldly experiences. Many who've encountered high DMT states report sacred geometry unfolding in impossible dimensions, telepathic contact with intelligent beings of light, the sensation of leaving the body entirely. If this gland produces DMT naturally, it would imply the human body is hardwired for altered states, that mysticism is not imaginary but biological. This is the temple of neuroalchemy, where chemical meets cosmic, where physics meets metaphysics, where biology becomes spiritual geometry.
Alchemy wasn't just about turning lead into gold. It was the metaphor for inner transmutation. Neuroalchemy is the idea that consciousness itself can refine, elevate, and transform the very structures of the brain. In ancient Egyptian esoterica, initiates would undergo sacred rites designed to activate both hemispheres of the brain and awaken what they called the seat of the soul. They didn't need wires. They didn't need silicon. They used sound, breath, stillness, and geometric architecture, a kind of temple technology embedded directly in the nervous system. What happens when sound meets the brain? Modern science shows that certain frequencies can cause the pineal gland to vibrate, producing resonance that feels like inner buzzing, light flashes, or even states of bliss. And ancient temples, from Karnak to Angkor Wat, were built with acoustic geometry that amplified those very frequencies. The soul doesn't need a church. It needs a chamber of resonance. And your body is that chamber. The original purpose of temples was not worship, it was awakening. In the hidden mystery schools of Africa and Egypt, initiates were taught to activate the pineal light through a combination of prolonged fasting, darkness rituals, breath-induced trance, and chant and tone-based frequency alignment. These were not superstitions, they were technologies of the soul. And today, they're being rediscovered, not by the mainstream, but by those brave enough to ask, what did they know that we forgot? What does it mean to see without eyes? In Kundalini activation, many report a moment when vision floods the mind, not as hallucination, but as memory, insight, even contact. This inward light bends not by refraction, but by attention. The moment the mind becomes still, the eye within opens, and what you see is everything.
In the deepest states of pineal activation, some report encountering sacred geometries that feel alive. These aren't mere hallucinations, they are the soul's architecture, a pattern language built not with atoms, but with awareness itself. The triangle, balance of mind, body, spirit. The spiral, evolution of consciousness. The sphere, unity, completion, divine wholeness. This is not religion. This is inner cartography. And the pineal gland is the compass. Why would modern systems deny, ridicule, or suppress this? Because the moment you realize your temple is within, you no longer need theirs. You become sovereign. You become ungovernable. You awaken.
This is why neurochemical studies of the pineal gland are underfunded. This is why altered states are criminalized. This is why your light was turned off, not because it's fake, but because it works. To awaken Kundalini is not just to activate energy. It is to ignite light in the darkness, to turn the temple inward. Your spine is the staff. Your breath is the chant. Your pineal is the lamp. And you are the priest. The geometry was never in the stone. It was in your soul.
What happens when the light arrives, but the vessel is still made of clay? This is the untold story of the spiritual injury no one talks about. When evolution comes too early. When Kundalini awakens before the body, the mind, or the nervous system is truly prepared, it doesn't begin with ecstasy, it begins with chaos. The spiritual world loves to sell Kundalini as a divine fountain of bliss, an upgrade to your nervous system, your health, your intuition. And while that can be true, it's not how it begins for many. For those who awaken too soon through trauma, substance use, or spontaneous bursts of inner light, the experience can feel like electrical surges up the spine, burning sensations in the skull, pressure in the third eye, sudden emotional breakdowns, physical tremors or convulsions, the collapse of reality as they knew it. This is not spiritual failure. It is the nervous system trying to catch up to the light.
Kundalini is not just energy. It is information. It carries the code of evolution, upgrading not just your thoughts, but your entire biology. But what happens when your tissues, muscles, hormones, and brainwaves are still wired for survival, not ascension? Disruption. This is where people report chronic fatigue, insomnia, panic attacks without triggers, hypersensitivity to light, sound, or even human presence. Cognitive dissonance between spiritual insight and daily functioning. The old body was designed for a different frequency. Now the current has changed, and your hardware is glitching. In ancient schools of mystery, in Egypt, Ethiopia, India, Kundalini was never awakened casually. It took years of purification, fasting, silence, breath mastery, emotional cleansing, sacred geometrical initiation. Why? Because they knew, without proper grounding, the light burns. Today, we rush awakening. We seek the shortcut. And we mistake symptoms of disorientation for signs of failure. But what if your trembling is initiation? What if your confusion is not regression, but a neuroalchemical fire refining the soul?
The nervous system is like a tree. It bends with pressure. It grows toward light. But if lightning strikes too soon, it splits. Some who awaken early report ego dissolution before emotional maturity, sudden psychic perception without boundaries, disconnection from the physical body, episodes of depersonalization or derealization. It's not because Kundalini is dangerous. It's because our modern context
has removed the sacred container. In the ancient world, one never awakened alone. There were elders, guides. Today, many awaken in silence, in isolation, with no map and no language for what's happening. There's a deeper trauma here, not from what caused awakening, but from the world's response to it. You're imagining it. That's just anxiety. You need medication. You're going crazy. The tragedy is not the experience itself. It's that modernity has no room for sacred experience. This rejection creates a psychic wound. The soul begins to retreat, and the light within starts to flicker, unless you realize that what is breaking is the container of the false self.
So what now? We return to what the ancients knew. Grounding is alchemy. The nervous system can be trained to hold more light, slowly, gently. Practices include somatic breath work, tonic herbs for adrenal support, slow, meditative movement, qigong, tai chi, exposure to natural electromagnetic fields, barefoot walking, sun gazing, chanting or toning to regulate vagus nerve function. This is not self-help. It's bio-spiritual reprogramming, updating the ancient circuitry to carry divine voltage without collapse. Pain is not punishment. It is a signal of capacity expanding. Just as muscles tremble under new load, so too does the spirit strain as it reshapes your being. The sacred fire within is not there to destroy you. It's there to forge you. The light awakens the blueprint of your higher self. But first, it must burn away the illusion of who you were told to be. And that hurts.
The most dangerous moment in early awakening? When the shadow emerges. Kundalini doesn't just activate light. It pushes the unconscious to the surface. Old traumas, suppressed rage, unprocessed grief, memories you forgot on purpose. They don't come up to destroy you. They come up so you can finally meet them and choose truth. In this phase, many run, but those who stay, who breathe through the darkness, become something else. Not awakened, not ascended, but real. You cannot enter the temple without being tested. That's always been the law. The body must become the chalice. The mind must become the mirror. The soul must become the flame. These trials are not random. They are precision forged by your own spirit to awaken the exact layers that must evolve. And when it feels like everything is falling apart, it is. But not your life. Just your limits.
The ancient stories told us this. The serpent comes in fire. The initiate must walk blindfolded through darkness. The temple gate only opens through sacrifice of comfort, identity, illusion. This is not new. It's just returning. And the fact that you're reading these words means you're already in it. You're not broken. You're in process. The fire is sacred. Let it burn.
The serpent was never evil.
It was light, moving like a wave. It coiled around spines, around suns, around time itself. And now, it's returning. Not as myth, not as symbol, but as you. For thousands of years, ancient civilizations depicted a serpent wrapped around a staff, a tree, or a rising sun. Egypt called it Uraeus, the cobra rising from the forehead, guarding divine sovereignty. India called it Kundalini, the coiled force of spiritual evolution. The Maya had Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent who brought knowledge. The Dogon of Mali knew of the Nomu, serpent beings from the stars. But what if these stories weren't mythology? What if they were memories of a time when consciousness was embodied, not abstracted, when the serpent wasn't feared, it was reviewed as the vehicle of light.
We now know the human spine resembles a serpent with its coiled curves and electrical axis. The nervous system pulses with waves of electrochemical energy like a snake's undulation. The pineal gland, nestled in the brain, is shaped like the eye of a reptile. But that's not all. Studies have shown the brain produces biophotons, literal light emissions. The DNA helix is a double serpent, spiraling in sacred geometry. The vagus nerve weaves through the body like an invisible river, the hidden path of the serpent. This is not poetry. This is design. The body itself is a temple to the solar serpent, the radiant intelligence that awakens from within. They encoded it in stone, in temples aligned with the stars, in rituals of breath and movement, in language we call myth, but which was transmission. Egypt's Djed pillar, the spine of Osiris, was a model of awakened structure. The caduceus of Hermes, twin serpents around a central rod, still represents modern medicine. Why?
Because they knew healing and awakening are not separate. Energy is not separate from light, and light is not separate from conscious will. The solar serpent is the form that consciousness takes when it enters the human body fully. We imagine awakening as a flash, a miracle, a single rising. But the return of the solar serpent is more evolutionary than explosive. It's happening slowly, in how we breathe, in how children are born more sensitive, in how trauma now demands to be healed, in how light technologies are re-emerging, sound baths, biophotonic therapies, psychedelics used ritually, in how ancient texts suddenly make sense again. We are not witnessing a new age. We are re-inheriting a very old one. And it comes not in temples of stone, but through flesh, breath, and consciousness.
Think of it. Your spine is a tuning fork. Your breath controls electricity. Your pineal gland responds to light and frequency. Your heart generates the largest electromagnetic field in your body. This isn't accidental. This is architecture. The solar serpent doesn't need a spaceship. It doesn't come from the sky. It rises from within, when your body becomes resonant with your soul. Most of human history has been spent surviving, eating, hiding, protecting, fighting. But now, something is shifting. We are moving toward creativity over conformity, healing over suppression, awareness over automation. And this shift is not driven by culture. It's driven by biology catching up to spirit. The solar serpent doesn't need a spaceship. It doesn't come from the sky. It rises from within, when your body becomes resonant with your soul. You are not just awakening, you are mutating toward light.
In esoteric Christianity, Christ is not just a man. He is Logos, the solar principle made flesh. In Hermeticism, the serpent is not Satan, but Sophia, wisdom coiled in matter. When Kundalini rises to meet Christ consciousness, it unites serpent and sun, body and spirit. This is not blasphemy. It is the integration of the fragmented God within you. The solar serpent is the reconciliation of earth and sky, instinct and awareness, desire and devotion, energy and form. It is the living bridge between ancient memory and future evolution. You are not just here to worship the serpent. You are here to become it, to let your nervous system become the ladder of light, to let your breath unlock the spiral of evolution, to let your heart remember the language of the sun. The solar serpent is not an external force. It's the inner sun rising through the coils of forgotten memory. And once you let it rise, you are no longer just a human. You are a conductor of cosmic memory, a node in the fractal web of divine intelligence, a walking, breathing expression of universal light.
This path is not safe. To awaken as the solar serpent is to dismantle your old identity. Burn away inherited fear. Speak truths no one wants to hear. Live from a place the world cannot yet understand. But in doing so, you become the living proof that divinity was never somewhere else. It was always waiting, inside your breath, coiled at your root, watching through your eyes. The serpent is returning, not to conquer, not to punish, but to remind that the body is a temple, that the breath is a key, that the fire is a teacher, and that you were always more than human. You were made to carry light. The solar serpent does not ask permission. It does not wait for institutions. It rises where it is honored, and it lives in those who remember. The time of memory has come, and you are the form it takes.